Hey everyone, it's Elliott, and welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk about getting into the mood of modes, and really thinking about modes in more than just running a scale, running a series of notes, in every position all over the neck, and then being like, I got it, mode's done. Because that is something that comes up to me a lot as a teacher. A lot of my students will ask me that. I've asked that of people at some point. Like at some point I was like, well, just, so I'll run the modes for like C Lydian, for instance. Right? Right? And now then I'll get C Lydian. I'll just understand it. That's not, it's a taste. It's not the whole dish. While it is advisable to, know the fretboard as well as you can and know your way around it, etc., that's not really bringing about what a mode is. So a much bigger part of that mode meal, if you will, is chord progressions that highlight the mood of a mode. If you like what you see here today or get something from today's video, please comment, like, and subscribe. It really helps me out. I really appreciate it a lot. Also, if you'd like to support further, there is a link to a Patreon in the description. I'd highly appreciate you check it out. One of the things that happens when we're just looking for scales to run and, shred through is that we're not really hearing the scale. That'll come up a lot. Like, oh, I can't, is that Lydian? Blah, blah, blah. Plenty of teachers will be like, you need to learn how to hear the mode. You need to learn how to hear the mode. But if you're just going from this, the G major that we all know, and just ending on C, sometimes you just hear it as like incomplete. You just hear it as and you want to go back to. And unfortunately, just playing the scale and ending on C over and over again, it doesn't do the best job of cementing. Using a progression that has the mood of that mode and then creating a vamp with it and kind of living with that vamp, living within that vamp for a little while, that'll do it. There were plenty of times where I would run a scale, and then if I was going to sing it back, I would still hear that F natural, which is obviously not C Lydian. Right? Even though I just played Lydian all day. That's what I would hear. Then, eventually, doing this way, just creating vamps and everything like that. That F sharp has enough time to really influence, my subconscious. It just feels right. It feels like reality now. F sharp is reality. No, not F. Now, I wouldn't make the mistake, even if it's conscious or not conscious, of singing an F, of hearing an F. I wouldn't think to go, after hearing C to D to C to D to C to D, no part of my mind is thinking, yeah, F natural, for sure. So how all of a sudden was I able to hear this mode? How all of a sudden was I able to hear Lydian without going through all my scales first? I heard the progression that set the mood. It made F sharp in this scenario, a big highlight, and was like, hey, that second chord, F sharp. It's an important part of that chord. It's an important part of the progression. So when practicing over that progression, don't just start at C Lydian, run through, you can run through all the positions of C Lydian over that progression. That'd be fine. But it's kind of nice to build up to that. The first place I would start would be C major pentatonic. Right? And that, holding that G over that, it's going to create a little bit of tension when the chord is D, right? That would be a little nasty. And my ear would naturally want to resolve it because I'm basically hitting this. This chord might be pretty, but if I was going to resolve this chord, I would naturally go to that F sharp. Again, how am I all of a sudden hearing Lydian? How am I all of a sudden, and how am I hearing C Lydian? It's like, well, I'm reacting to the chords in the progression appropriately. That's basically it. So just playing in C major pentatonic, my ear will go, oh, that's a little bit more tension. Where would it resolve? Oh, it'll resolve to F sharp. And now, when I'm playing in a Lydian scenario, I can go, I know that that's the note, because after jamming on it for a while, I realized, oh, that's where I want to resolve. After jamming on that progression in C major pentatonic and kind of listening carefully to where there's tension and where there's release, I would go to arpeggios. So when using arpeggios, I would only highlight the ones in the progression. And just for fun, I would do it over just the chord of the mode I'm trying to highlight. So in this case, C. I'm just going back and forth between C and then D major. Really sets the mood of C Lydian. So to recap, first I would just strum the progression. Get used to that for a while, then stick to just major pentatonic, or in certain scenarios minor pentatonic, but a very simple scale with the main chord that I'm trying to highlight. After that, I would do arpeggios that outline the progression that I'm playing, and then from there, I would start playing the whole mode. And I'm going to play it with a bit more sensitivity, because I'm going to kind of be thinking of that progression. I'm going to be highlighting C for a second, and then D. D. C. D. Back and forth, and I'll know how to, really sell Lydian, really evoke Lydian. Working on modes this way can also be helpful, because when you're learning through progressions, you're basically learning through isolated parts of song. So in a song where it's C and D and C and D back and forth, might be like a pre-chorus. If we're starting out with a verse, like, right? G's our home base here. Then maybe the pre-chorus. Chorus. Right? But for that pre-chorus, it felt a little pre-chorusy, right? It felt a little unsettling, maybe a little light. Not unsettling, but it didn't feel maybe solid. And that was kind of highlighting that instability of Lydian with going just C, D, C, D. Even though in this particular scenario, we always go back to G. So after spending a lot of time working on Lydian, that pre-chorus is something that I might approach a little differently. Instead of just soloing, just soloing my heart out or something, I would treat it as a Lydian progression for a second. I would treat it as unstable for a second. I might, use that scenario as like, okay, so in the song it's clearly unstable, but it's also sort of building to the eventual G. So right? So that's kind of me sitting in the goop, and here's me trying to build. It'll do some sort of like modal things. But then the building motion comes from that arpeggio idea earlier for as a way to practice. Right? I hope you see that difference between just kind of sitting in a sea of Lydian and then having a Lydian chord progression provide us with that instability that eventually we can use to build toward, in this scenario, a G again. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.